So I made a video on some initial rumors of the 2022 MacBook Air, and in that video I predicted that we won't be seeing a huge overhaul to the design for the foreseeable future. But guys, you might be glad to hear that I was completely wrong about that prediction, because we have information from Mark Gurman that we could be seeing a redesigned MacBook Air with MagSafe, mini LED, more ports, and possibly a smaller body launching in late 2021. You heard me right. We could be seeing this as soon as this year. That's kind of insane, and so without further ado, let's just delve into this leak. Make sure to like and subscribe, click that bell notification for the latest Apple news and rumors, and with that being said, let's just tuck in. So this leak has caught me off guard because I made my initial prediction about the design based on, of course, the past. In the past, the Air has been slow to adopting big features. For example, we didn't have a Retina screen on a MacBook Air till 2018. So yes, clearly Apple doesn't want all the big features to come to the Air immediately, and so I thought the redesign would be something that happens later in the future. But it seems Apple just wants a full sweep of the lineup with Apple Silicon, and so yes, let's delve into the big features with these redesigned MacBook Airs. And the first major thing is exactly the design. So Mark Gurman, very accurate source, 89% on Apple Track, so we can take this information with a lot of credibility. He tells us that this new version of the MacBook Air will be considerably thinner, lighter, and smaller. Now, Mark Gurman does mention the screen size will be staying the same, so 13.3 inches, but Apple's going to be shrinking the bezel around that screen to achieve the smaller body. This talk about a smaller, lighter, thinner MacBook Air gets me really amped because, of course, in the past, we've heard many rumors of Apple revamping the 12-inch MacBook. In fact, I've made many videos regarding it. Check one out in the iCard above. But essentially, it feels like this redesigned MacBook Air will be a reincarnation of that original 12-inch MacBook. Because if anything, the 12-inch MacBook should really be the Air because it was insanely light, it was insanely thin, and it was insanely small. And so if Apple could get rid of those bezels, they could easily fit a 13-inch display. And so I think that's what Apple's basing this new design on, in my opinion. Now, interestingly, Mark Gurman does mention that a 15-inch Air was also in the works, but it's been scrapped. Though I don't really believe that. I think Apple will be making a bigger version of the Air because in the past, they've offered two sizes, and I feel like offering a bigger version of the Air would be ideal because I know plenty of people who want a bigger MacBook without, of course, the humongous price. And so by offering some pretty baseline performance but giving us a huge screen, I think that will be incredibly popular, and so I do hope we see Apple return to two sizes on the MacBook Air and give us a 15-inch model. And if you think about it, a 15-inch MacBook Air could actually be a similar size to the current 13-inch MacBook Air because, of course, the current model has insanely thick, chunky bezels, and so if Apple could get rid of that, they could easily fit in a 15-inch screen, and so I think that size would be ideal for a lot of people, and so it does make a lot of sense if Apple does do that in the future. Anyways, another big upgrade with this next generation Air is MagSafe and more ports. So Mark Gurman told us a few days ago that MagSafe would be making a return on the MacBook Pros, and of course now we have confirmation that MagSafe will once again be a staple across all MacBook models, and so it's very nice to see the new Air will also adopt this technology. But I think the more exciting news is more ports. More ports are coming to the MacBook Air. It's going to be 4 ports, so much like the current 13-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pro, you're going to have 2 ports on each side, and that's going to be way more useful than having 2 ports on one side like it is right now. Now, it does seem the main differentiation between the Air and the Pro will be the ports, because we know the Pro will be bringing back the SD card reader, possibly HDMI, possibly USB 3.0, a lot more ports on the Pro, which of course would make sense because professionals only use those ports. For most consumers who are buying the Air, they'll be fine with USB-C. So yes, I think an absolutely great upgrade on the Air. I'm looking forward to MagSafe coming back on the Mac. It's going to be absolutely amazing. And 4 ports, that's very convenient. Anyways, let's quickly touch on the display upgrade with this new MacBook Air. And of course, that is mini LED. So what is mini LED, you may ask? Well, it's not like I've explained this a billion times in many videos, but essentially, let me recap again. Mini LED is essentially LCD with some of the benefits of OLED. So you get better colors, better contrast, higher brightness, a bunch of improvements, which of course brings LCD closer to OLED. Another upgrade that we can expect with new versions of every MacBook is of course a spec upgrade. We can see a next-gen Apple Silicon chip debuting on this 2021 MacBook Air. Now, as for the specs of this chip, we know nothing. So yes, this supposed M2 chip I think is going to be very similar to the M1 because again, this is an entry-level machine, and so Apple does want to differentiate the amount of performance and horsepower from, of course, the Pros. And we know that Apple is allegedly giving us 12 power cores in the next Pros, so clearly they're pushing the power on the Pros, and I think the Air will stick to the current 4 power cores and 4 efficiency cores of the M1. If anything, I expect possibly Apple to focus on efficiency with the next MacBook Air because the Air has been known for its terrific battery life, and so for Apple to push the envelope in that regard, I think a lot more users would appreciate that. Right, so now we come to the most important parts for you guys, which is of course undoubtedly release date and price, and weirdly enough for once, Mark Gurman gives us some pieces of evidence regarding this. So as I said before, release date should be in the second half of 2021 at the very earliest, and that makes a lot of sense because we saw the original M1 Air debut in November of 2020 at the Mac event, and so I'm assuming we'll see something similar from Apple this year too. Now it does seem that Mark Gurman is unsure of the exact release date because he also tells us there is a possibility that this could be delayed to early 2022. This would actually corroborate with a rumor from Min-Chi Kuo, who also said that we should expect a mini LED Air in 2022, and so I do think that is more likely than the second half of 2021. I mean, let's be honest, the M1 Air is an absolutely excellent machine at $1,000. It's just incredible value, and so Apple really doesn't need to rush out this upgrade, and so they can take as much time as they want, and so I think they will do exactly that. Anyways, talking about the price, let's now touch on that because there might be some bad news regarding this. So Mark Gurman mentions 2 things in this report. Number 1, this redesign will be a higher end version in the MacBook Air lineup, but number 2, the M1 model will stick around as a base option in the lineup alongside this redesigned model. So yeah, that basically confirms that we should be seeing a price hike with this redesign, and I think that confirms that we can expect a price hike with the rest of the redesigns coming very, very soon. So the iMac, the MacBook Pros should all be going up, though we don't know specifically how much more they will be over their predecessors. Now, as for the MacBook Air, I think the price is going to be $1,200. I think this is going to replace the M1 base MacBook Pro. You see, I voiced my opinions on how Apple needs to differentiate the Air from the Pro, and so getting rid of the base MacBook Pro altogether and replacing it with a higher end version of the Air makes so much more sense. Because a long time ago, the base MacBook Pro made a lot of sense because the Air was severely underpowered, and so if you wanted a machine to do intense things like video editing or photo editing, you kind of were forced to buy the base MacBook Pro. But now, that's just not the case anymore. The M1 Air is an absolute champ. It does everything you need a laptop to do, and so I don't think we need 2 specific entry-level versions anymore. We just need one entry-level model and then of course a premium tier that has some higher-end features. And also we know that Apple will be replacing the 4-port edition of the MacBook Pro only with the 14-inch redesign, not the M1 machine we have right now, and so it only makes sense that Apple just gets rid of that lineup as a whole and just splits the Air lineup into 2. I mean, we've seen this in the past. For example, when we had the initial redesign back in 2018, that model started at $1,200, but Apple kept around the infamous non-Retina MacBook Air at the same good old $1,000, and so I think we'll see a very similar structure here where we see the base M1 at $1,000, and then of course, this new version with a better chip at $1,200. And then of course, eventually in 2 to 3 years, when the redesign can be brought back to that good old $1,000 starting price, we could see Apple launch a 15-inch model at $1,200 to take the spot of course, the 13-inch base MacBook Pro. That makes a lot of sense to me, to be honest, but tell me in the comments below, what do you think Apple's doing with the MacBook Air lineup? How do you think the MacBook lineup in the future will look like? Anyways, on that note, I'm going to end it here. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click that bell notification for the latest Apple news and rumors. Check out a video here in the icon above about some iPhone 13 rumors that might intrigue you. And on that note, I'll see you guys in the next one. See you, peeps.